Well, good morning and welcome to the second webinar in our Talking Dance series. Talking Dance brings together leading organisations to discuss roadblocks to achieving diversity in dance, so that together we can consider how these might be dismantled to create a truly inclusive future for dance education and training. My name is Ginny Brown, I'm the Chief Executive at the ISTD. And for anyone that would benefit, each speaker is going to introduce themselves with a short visual description. So I'll start with that. I'm a woman. My hair is dark brown, curly, very thick and shoulder length. I wear glasses and in fact all the presenters, or most of the presenters, are sitting against a blue background. So this morning we're focusing on the future of cultural education with the aim of raising awareness of the different contexts in which dance is taught and the potential barriers to accessing dance education, so that we can identify ways in which organisations can work together to create a stronger infrastructure for dance education and talent development. And we will also be aiming to provide you with tangible strategies for improving access to dance education in your own context. And to do that, I'm delighted to be joined by an eminent panel of specialists, each of whom brings a different perspective and a rich experience of cultural education. So first to speak this morning will be Appelbaum, who is Director of Children and Young People at Arts Council England. She will be followed by Laura Nicholson, Head of Children and Young People at One Dance UK. And then Glyn Jones, Director of CDMT, which is the Council for Dance, Drama and Musical Theatre. And rounding off our lineup is Solange Erdang, Chief Executive of Erdang Academy. When we were preparing for this morning's event, we reflected that we're probably speaking to the converted. As dance teachers and arts professionals, we all know that something magical happens when students are immersed in the art of dancing, that ideas and emotions can be expressed physically in ways that they can't quite be captured in words, and that a deep unspoken bond is formed between dancers as they move, create and learn together. Of course, we also know that dancing not only keeps us physically fit, but is also great for mental well-being, providing enjoyable opportunities for self-expression and collaboration. And that sadly, not enough children and young people have opportunities to experience the life-enhancing qualities of dance. And that has only been further exacerbated by successive lockdowns over the past 18 months. Which have resulted in children and young people spending long times in front of computer screens with very limited opportunities for physical exploration, socialising and play. And in many ways, the restrictions of the pandemic have just really brought into sharp focus what we value most: health and well-being, connection with our friends, families and community, and equality of opportunity for all. So as we emerge from the pandemic, now's a good time to be considering what future we want to build for the next generation. What skills and attributes are they going to need to thrive in a post-pandemic world? Might cultural education support children and young people to embrace opportunities for the future? And if so, how can we address the patchiness of current provision to ensure equality of access to cultural education for all? So these are big questions our speakers are going to grapple with this morning, but I know they're amply qualified to do so. And we would like this event to be as interactive as possible. So you're invited to post questions in the Q&A box whilst each speaker is presenting. At the end of each presentation, we will pick up one question, but we will also save some for the end of the morning when we will have a panel discussion to round off this session. I know we're lucky enough to have international members in our audience today. So although the organisations that are presenting are all based in England, many of them do have an international reach, and we will try to ensure that we consider the international context in our discussions. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Anne Appelbaum, who is Director of Children and Young People at Arts Council England, which is the national development agency for creativity and culture. Arts Council England invests public money from government and the National Lottery to support the development of the sector. And following the COVID-19 crisis, Arts Council developed a £160 million emergency response package for organisations and individuals needing support, and is also one of the bodies administering the government's Cultural Recovery Fund. Arts Council recently published a new 10-year strategy, Let's Create, which covers the period 2020 to 2030, and it has an umbrella vision of creating a country transformed by culture, bringing us together, happier, healthier, to incite, excite, inspire and delight, to enrich our lives. I couldn't think of a better way of framing today's conversation. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you, Ginny, and hello from East London. I'm going to say a bit more about the Arts Council, about our strategy, and importantly, I'm going to say a bit about what we've heard directly from children and young people over the last few years and how that's helped inform what we do now and what we're going to be doing in the future. So I'll start with a little bit about Let's Create. As Jenny said, we have a new 10-year strategy that was published early last year, and it's the result of a number of years of looking at data and evidence, of listening to people in the cultural sector, in listening to our stakeholders, our staff, and of course, members of the public, including children and young people. So while we were working on the strategy, the best evidence that we had available to us absolutely showed us that not all children and young people are participating and progressing their talents equally. And we would all agree here today, that's not right, that's not fair, we have to do better, we have to do different, and that has become our focus. And during the development of the strategy, as I've said, we spoke to hundreds of children and young people as members of the public, and really significantly, another few hundred young creatives, kind of 12 to 30-year-olds, to make sure their views were also represented on the page. And what we heard from them is that children and young people are very creative. They don't always benefit from the public investment in arts and culture, but they are. We heard a lot about how important it is to be creative in school alongside what they do in their free time. I heard a lot about how hard it is to get experience when you don't have experience, how a small helping hand at the start of your career makes such a significant difference. I heard a lot about role models and how important, how critical it is to have a role model that looks and sounds like you do, and how parents also need to hear and see familiar role models to know that it's a reasonable choice for their children. Lastly, and this isn't surprisingly, we heard a lot about climate change and how that's of the utmost urgency to children and young people. So we worked really hard to make sure that what we heard was incorporated into the strategy, and I hope that we've done okay representing their views on the page. So it was published last year, just before the pandemic changed everybody's lives. And what we did in response is quite well documented, and Ginny's mentioned some of it. So I'm going to just talk a bit about what we did in terms of children and young people. So one of the things we did with the fantastic help of our bridge organizations, we distributed more than 40,000 Let's Create packs of art materials to families across the country who could use them. We also activated our first ever partnership with Google Arts and Culture. It was called The Way I See It. It was brilliant. It's still online. It's an online gallery for young artists to really reflect on the summer they had last year, a summer like no other. Dance Fest in the Midlands was one of the partners, and I highly recommend you take a look at what they've done. We started to do some work looking at ArtsMark, our national schools program. We continue to implement the recommendations from the Durham Commission, including launching the Creativity Exchange to share ideas on developing young people's creativity. And selection is underway right now as I speak for the schools who will lead the creativity collaboratives, which are networks of schools that will be testing new ways to teach for creativity. Very close to my heart. This is very exciting for us. We're establishing a pilot youth advisory board. Recruitment is live now. We're recruiting a group of young people based in the North. This has been so many years in the making, and it just shows everyone what an impact the young people who we spoke to during the development of Let's Create made, that we've decided this is just going to become standard to how we work. And of course, I should say we continued and still do to work with the DFE, the Department for Education, to help them understand the unique role the arts can play in supporting the whole child. And during this last year, we really wanted to learn more about the impact of COVID on young people. So we worked with Beat Freaks to consult again with young people. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm speaking for all young people. I'm not, I don't want to label or place a deficit model. This is just a flavor of what we heard directly. We heard there's a lot more anxiety around future career prospects. We heard that loneliness is a much bigger problem than it was before. We heard they want to be valued as and respected as artists in their own right, beyond just their formal qualifications in school. We heard that they need and want digital skills in order to succeed. And we heard, of course, that the profound impact of Black Lives Matter has changed their lives. We're absolutely committed to continuing the discussion with young people through the Youth Advisory Board that's being established. So I'm going to say just a bit quickly about the dance landscape within the Arts Council. I know Laura is going to pick up specifically about dance in schools, so I'll leave that to her, but just a brief overview of our work with dance. So within our national portfolio, we have 64 dance organizations, and that's 42 million pounds a year. It's everything from the English National Ballet to Balbir Singh and Stopgap, who I know work with ISTD on making sure your training is fully inclusive. It's big, it's small, it's across the country, it's in and out of school. It spans everywhere that young people want to be progressing in their dance talent. We also have our project grants and developing your creative practice funding streams. So in the first quarter of this financial year, we've invested almost $3.5 million in dance-focused project grants, and that's almost 300 different projects. And in the 9 rounds of developing your creative practice, which is our fund specifically for individual artists, so far $1.5 million has been awarded to dance artists, and we expect this to grow and become more significant as we focus on individuals. So as I've said, we work very closely with DFE. In my team, we actually work more with DFE than we do with DCMS. And you'll know that we co-invest in the wonderful National Youth Dance Company with them. And you'll know the company works so hard to reflect the diversity of England. I'm sorry, that's my battery. Excuse me. Across disability, race, ethnicity, gender, class. And last year, almost half the dancers were from non-white backgrounds, a quarter had a disability, almost 2/3 were from low-income households, and were receiving free scholarships. I'm absolutely gutted that I missed the show at Sadler's last week. I was on holiday. It's always one of the cultural highlights of my year. And I'm hoping I'll be able to either see it online or somehow. Looking ahead quickly, now in the next few weeks, we will be publishing our delivery plan. So the first stage of our plans to implement our strategy. That work was delayed due to the pandemic, and naturally our thinking has changed somewhat, but nevertheless, the delivery plan is absolutely explicit in our support for the creative lives of children and young people where they live, where they go to school, and where they spend their free time. We have a particular lean towards equity and inclusion to make sure that we're supporting all with potential, whatever their life circumstances are. So a few quick examples. We're going to start some work now mapping progression routes so we can really understand what those routes look like, what those blocks are, and what those barriers are. We're working on ArtsMark, our national schools program, which turns 20 next school year, to evolve it into the next version of what it can be to support the arts and culture in schools. As I keep saying, we're working so hard to embed youth voice within the organization, and always, ever onwards, we'll continue to work with the DFE on cultural education policy and programs. To do that, we really need to understand the needs of children and young people, of the sector, of schools, of families and communities to make the strongest case. I know, as Ginny said, there is ample evidence of the impact of dance on children and young people's lives, the impact on their mental health, on their physical health. It is profound, and we all know it's real. And when I speak to DFE officials, we continue to talk to them about the widest range of benefit that being creative, that moving your body can bring to children and young people of all ages. So as we move now into publishing our delivery plans, living the strategy, I hope that it's clear that children and young people remain at the heart of what we do, particularly making sure that anyone, no matter who they are, where they are, has equal chance to develop their potential, their interests, anywhere they are in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, for that really eloquent overview of the huge amount of work that Arts Council is doing. And it's really heartening to hear how the voice of the child and young person has really been at the heart of the development of your strategy and continues to be at the heart of your work as you take it forward. I also think from our perspective, great to hear about the close collaboration between the Arts Council and Department for Education, and that we're working towards a sort of a joined up understanding of creativity within education. And I think it would be great later on in the panel discussion to pick up on the mapping of progression routes, which I think is obviously really close to the heart of our members. But in the meantime, there is a question that's come in that I would just like to pose to you, which was with regards to Artsmark. And is there any consideration of Artsmark being available internationally for British international schools who follow a British curriculum but are based abroad?
I mean, there could be. I know in the past that schools that were responsible for children in British forces bases were always eligible, but it's absolutely something that we could consider. I mean, what we're trying to do with it now is build on everything that is brilliant about it, build on the successes, build on the kind of groundswell of support around it, and also create more of a menu so that those schools for whom it is just too much of an ask right now for all kinds of reasons that don't necessarily have to do with not being interested and committed with the arts, but how they might also benefit from the program as well. We've also been doing quite a lot of work looking at how we might do some targeted work with particular groups of children and young people in schools. So we're doing some work with an organization that focuses on care experienced children and young people to see what we might do. We've been speaking to many deaf and disabled led organizations as well to find out if there's anything particular that we might do as part of Artsmark 20 and beyond to really strengthen the relationship between Artsmark and the deaf and disabled community.
Well, thank you so much, Anne, and we will obviously look forward to hearing more about that as we come back to the panel discussion. But now it's my pleasure to move us on and to introduce Laura Nicholson, who is Head of Children and Young People's Dance at One Dance UK. One Dance UK is a subject association for dance in schools, and Laura advocates for access to high quality dance education to government departments, MPs, education leaders and other key stakeholders. She also strategically leads on a national programme of dance activity for young people, including the U Dance National Festival, which I know has just finished. So thank you, Laura, for being with us. And also the National National Young Creators Programme for aspiring choreographers. Before coming to One Dance UK, she spent 12 years working in the secondary education sector, developing a highly successful dance and performing arts curriculum at an inner city secondary school in Leeds, before taking up a role as assistant head teacher at a secondary school in Wakefield. So welcome, Laura, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Ginny. It's really, really great to be here. Thanks for that lovely introduction. So my name's Laura Nicholson. I am a white female in my early 40s, and I have long or shoulder length blonde hair. I also have a cat sitting behind me that's likely to make an appearance as well during this presentation. So apologies if he does. Okay, so for me, if the question is, how do we build our homegrown dance talent? How do we nurture the next generation of dancers, artists, choreographers, dance teachers, and dance health professionals? For me, the answer is simple. In order to achieve that aspiration, we have to offer every single child and young person the opportunity to receive high quality and free, or at least affordable, dance education and training in and out of school. Aside from providing a springboard towards a career in dance for those that want one and have the skills to succeed, at One Dance UK, we believe access to dance education is the birthright of every child, for the wider cultural and life skills it offers, not to mention the enormous range of health and well-being benefits that dance brings. We know that there is a wealth of fantastic out-of-school dance provision available through private dance classes and studios and so on, and that is absolutely something to be celebrated and championed, but it doesn't necessarily offer a level playing field. For some young people, access to dance in mainstream school may be the first and indeed might be the only exposure they get to dance. For others, there are financial issues, a lack of family support or other barriers, such as living in an area with limited dance provision. That means accessing dance through out-of-school settings is not a reality for many. Access to dance for children and young people is a necessity, not a luxury. That's something we really strongly believe in at One Dance UK, and something that drives us on a daily basis as the sector support organisation for dance and the Subject Association for Dance in Schools. But if I'm honest, year after year, and at the moment, it feels like day after day, we're faced with a fresh set of challenges and barriers to that aspiration being realised. The dance education sector in mainstream education, excuse me, we're seeing cuts and attacks at every turn. So for some time now, dance education in schools has been marginalised and has been a subject under immense threat. And naturally, of course, the pandemic has brought further significant challenges. So to bring this valuable educational subject under attack is all the more baffling and concerning when we consider the wider context. Number one, we've got an obesity pandemic. So 1 in 5 children are obese when they leave primary school, according to Diabetes UK. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that dance on its own can fix that, but it does make me question, why is any physical activity having to battle to be taken seriously in that context? Number 2, we've got a mental health crisis. 1 in 6 children now has a mental health condition, according to the Children's Society. Now, again, I'm not suggesting that dance on its own could solve that problem. But when we know the many positive benefits that dance can bring for health and well-being, and when we now see dance and arts on prescription for adults with mental health issues, why are we not considering prevention before cure? A workforce of dance graduates who can go on to work in the growing area of social prescription through dance is also needed to support the NHS and to promote the good health of the general population. And number 3, we know money talks, so let's consider the economic contribution of dance. The cultural sector alone contributed over £32 billion to the UK economy in 2018. That's an increase of almost 22% in real terms since 2010. This extraordinary growth is fueled by live performance. Pre-pandemic, the creative industries in the UK employed over 2 million people, with a further 1 million jobs projected to be created by 2030. So why are we battling to preserve a subject that teaches the very skills that our young people need to enter employment? We do see cuts and squeezes at every level of dance education, but perhaps the most stark and bleak picture is painted by the data on exam entries at Key Stage 4 and 5. There's been almost a 50% reduction in the number of GCSE dance entries over 12 years, and more than a 50% drop in A-level dance entries over just 9 years. So A-level dance had just 1,100 entries in 2020. Now, it might be easy to explain that away by saying, well, students clearly just don't want to take dance, they're not interested, but that is not true, because we consistently see from active lives and taking part data and from out of school dance settings that where dance is a genuine choice, there is a huge appetite and huge demand for dance for children and young people at both recreational and exam level. Now, that's fantastic news, of course, but only for those who can afford it and for those that have the family support and infrastructure to encourage it. My own experiences of teaching in mainstream education were mainly in highly deprived inner city areas. And the barriers for those young people to accessing any kind of out of school provision were financial, but it wasn't just a financial barrier. It was often about a lack of cultural capital. So for example, for theatre trips, I often had to support the parents to understand how to navigate the timetable, to understand what bus their child needed to get, because they'd just never been on that bus route before and they didn't know how to manage it. When you're struggling to organise how to put food on the table, a family priority is not ensuring that your child has the right colour leotard to attend their dance class. So we've established that dance is both a vital subject for our young people and a popular one. So why this decline in dance in schools? Well, teachers and students are telling us that the marginalisation of dance in their school comes down to three things: pressure from parents, other teachers, careers advisors, and SLT for students to choose other subjects which are sold to them as being more important or valuable. EBAC subjects being prioritised by the school, meaning dance is removed or reduced as an option, so it's not available to all. And sometimes a lack of support from school leaders and governors, including the multi-academy trust agenda, meaning that some schools who've previously valued the arts are moving away once they've joined a particular multi-academy trust. And this is all a bit gloomy for a Monday morning, but I'm afraid to say the challenges to dance education don't stop there. At further education, the DfE recently confirmed reforms that will effectively force children aged 16 to decide whether they are academic and study A-levels with a view to going to university, or whether they are practical with a view to learning a skill or a trade through the new T-level programme. Now, to me, it's completely baffling that dance and performing arts have not been valued enough to be included in that T-level programme. The future of BTECs and other vocational qualifications looks uncertain, and we are working with exam boards to find out more information about whether they're likely to be funded in future. And it continues. At higher education level, there's now a confirmed 49% funding cut for so-called non-priority subjects, and that includes dance. And this could be catastrophic for the dance talent pipeline in the UK and the sector as a whole. It could mean that the next generation are denied opportunities to fulfil their potential and their talents, and a negative impact on UK economic growth. And there's also currently an open consultation taking place on the teacher training and education system in mainstream schools. Now, if those proposed changes go ahead, we're really concerned about the possible impact on the quality and the availability of training for dance teachers going forwards, or whether in fact that will exist at all, given that dance is not a national curriculum subject in its own right. There's also a worrying and damaging rhetoric that is drip fed into society, and it drip feeds this idea that dance is insignificant. So we hear language in the media like dead end, low value, non-priority to describe dance courses. And that does very little to build belief and confidence in our brilliant and vibrant sector. Now, all these cuts and changes will certainly mean that some groups will be more disadvantaged than others. And there's no doubt in my mind that our financially and socially disadvantaged young people will be more severely impacted than their wealthier counterparts. So we're in grave danger of dance only being a pathway and a career available for those who can afford it, creating a two-tier system. So dance is in very real danger of becoming the preserve of the elite. Now, there are some national programmes that aim to address this. One Dance UK's U-Dance model seeks to celebrate and champion best practice in youth dance. And over the last 2 years, we have moved to an online model for the National Festival. And that allows more young people to access high quality provision, such as professional masterclasses for free, but it's only once a year. There are also some fantastic DfE funded schemes in England, which are means tested, like the National CAT schemes, the Centres for Advanced Training, and the National Youth Dance Company, which Anne just mentioned, which provide real quality talent progression routes outside of school. But they can't possibly reach all young people, or indeed serve all dance styles. So we advocate for a government commitment to sustain and develop those programmes. But clearly then, a key question for our wider sector is, how can we remove the barriers so that all children and young people can have access to the quality dance provision that we know exists? How do we close up the gaps and stop talented young people from slipping through the net? And as mainstream schools face such huge challenges, how can the private sector offer support, knowledge and expertise in the community? Perhaps now, as we focus on post-pandemic recovery, this question is more urgent than ever. At One Dance UK, we recently conducted a large-scale survey on dance education and received almost 500 responses from those working in a variety of educational settings. 49% said that specialist dance teaching staff have been reduced or removed from their setting. Reflecting on the last 10 years, 50% of respondents said it had become harder to deliver high quality dance to their students. 57% said that opportunities for extracurricular enrichment, trips, visits, visiting artists, and all of those other strategies that we know are there to stretch and challenge our most able and most talented students had been removed completely during the pandemic. Now, perhaps that's not surprising in itself, but what's worrying is the majority also say that has changed, it's triggered a change of culture and priorities in their school. So those activities will not be coming back in September. And perhaps most alarming of all, 73% of respondents said that their students' mental health and well-being had worsened since the pandemic, and 66% said that students seemed less fit. Now, again, I'm not saying that's purely because they've had less access to dance during that time. Of course, it's really complicated and it's a multi-layered issue. But it seems that more than ever, we need quality dance education with the relevant funding, the infrastructure and the support in place, if we're even to begin to nurture that next generation of talent. But beyond that, we also need it to support a healthy generation of young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, for an incredibly eloquent, if somewhat bleak overview of the dance in school sector, and one I'm sure that will hit hard everybody in the audience today who clearly shares your passion for teaching dance and the value of dance as part of a child's education. And you raised some really important questions that I would like to just note so that I think we can come back to them in the panel discussion about how do we address those barriers. You were very clear, I think, about the challenges associated with all children and young people being able to access dance provision out of school, and the challenges that we currently have with it within school and the curriculum priorities. So I think there's a question there around how we do address those barriers and what part the private dance sector, the members of organisations such as ISTD can do to support that broadening access and to ensure that we do work cohesively as a sector and provide more opportunities for children and young people. So thank you so much. And I think that we will hold those questions. I've got them noted to come back to when we have the panel discussion. And now we're going to move on to Glyn Jones, who is the director of the Council for Dance, Drama and Musical Theatre, CDMT, which is the UK-wide industry quality assurance body for institutions delivering training, education and assessment within the performing arts. Formerly known as the Council for Dance, Education and Training, Glyn successfully repositioned the organisation's remit and branding to include drama during 2016-17. And then earlier this year, CDMT established the All-Parliamentary Group for Performing Arts, Education and Training at Westminster and acts as the group's secretariat. Previously, Glyn had a senior role at an international awarding organisation where he was a key member of a team which delivered a sustained increase in turnover by winning tenders, securing government support and developing innovative new products. So welcome, Glyn.
Thank you very much, Ginny. As introduction, I'm a male. I've got short brown hair. I'm 5'7" in height, and this morning I'm wearing a shirt without a tie. But on to talking about graded examinations. CDMT is the quality assurance and membership body for the professional performing arts industries. It is the first point of contact for those seeking information on training, education and assessment in the sector across the UK. After a year of upheaval, hopefully we can now, albeit cautiously, at last begin to view the future with some optimism. But awarding organisations offering graded examinations promote progression and achievement in dance, drama, music and musical theatre by delivering world-class assessments and by supporting the work of private teachers. These organisations, as you can see, operate in 100+ countries globally, and pre-COVID have an approximate combined turnover of more than 175 million each year, annual examination entries of 1.85 million internationally, of which 40% are dance, 50% music and 10% drama, and have an engagement with over 80,000 teachers in the UK and a further 100,000 overseas. So as you can see, they represent the interests of a large number of practitioners and together have understandable concerns about the support needed to regenerate the performing arts teaching and learning world in the aftermath of COVID. To this end, over the last year, CDMT has submitted reports to parliamentarians, the Department for Education, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, highlighting the impact of COVID on our members, and has published dedicated booklets and papers addressing the challenges ahead, including the ebook, Restarting the Sector. To help alleviate pressures on primary and secondary schools, we have particularly been urging ministers and the all-party parliamentary group, for which we are secretariat, to encourage increased outsourcing of arts provision to specialist teaching practitioners, such as those preparing students for Ofqual regulated graded examinations. But as context, in recent years, the numbers of students taking GCSE and A-levels in performing arts subjects have been decreasing. Since 2010, there has been a 50% decrease in students taking A-level dance, drama and music, and a similar pattern is replicated for GCSEs, which show a reduction of some 30 to 40% for both drama, music, and also dance. More specifically, pre-COVID in 2019, there were 110,000 candidate entries at GCSE for dance, drama, and music, and 17,500 at A-level. In contrast, 1.1 million graded examinations were taken in the UK during the same period, of which 500,000 were part of Ofqual's regulated framework. And I will touch on some more dance-specific data a little later. So these numbers highlight a disparity between the obvious interest and commitment that students have in studying for performing arts qualifications outside of schools, and the significant decrease in uptake of general qualifications within mainstream settings. We believe that specialist support to schools and colleges from teacher networks connected to awarding organisations offering graded exams would plainly help to promote and foster an interest in the creative arts within the curriculum, as well as broadening the education offer more generally, further supporting learners of diverse backgrounds and those in challenging circumstances. In June 2021, Lord Clancarty introduced a debate at the House of Lords by questioning what support the government intends to provide for education in arts subjects in secondary schools, to which responses were provided by Baroness Berridge, Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for the School System. Placing a spotlight on CDMT validated awarding organisations, Lord Aberdare moved to ask the following question, for which we will play a recording.
My Lords, many secondary schools can only provide performing arts education with the support of specialist external arts teaching practitioners, particularly for dance and drama. Many of these are linked with awarding organisations validated by the Council for Dance, Drama and Musical Theatre, which offer Ofqual regulated graded examinations. What plans does the government have to promote the use by schools of such specialist performing arts teaching, thereby broadening schools' access to these highly regarded qualifications? And how will the Education Recovery Plan ensure that all schools are able to offer the balanced curriculum that the government requires?
But Lord Aberdare is a vice chair of the all-party parliamentary group for which we support. The government has set aside a universal catch-up and recovery premium of some £650 million for schools to use as they see fit. Baroness Berridge, in her initial reply to Lord Aberdare's question, mentioned that this premium might provide the means for many schools to achieve their aspirations to enhance their performing arts activities. We have subsequently sent a report and letter to the Baroness requesting further and deeper consideration of the points raised in the debate, for which we are awaiting her reply. We are particularly interested to hear how students who might otherwise be deprived of access to an essential element of a broad and balanced education will be better served in the coming years, and how schools might be encouraged to make a more robust creative offer. It is fair to point out that excellent networking opportunities for the creative sector are already well established through many Arts Council England initiatives, for example, the music hubs, which have proven useful in bringing together local authorities, schools, arts organisations, and community and voluntary bodies. we suggest that these relationships could usefully be extended to support activities in dance, drama, and musical theatre, particularly in a context where resources may be limited. Such opportunities are of special relevance to students who have missed significant periods of practical learning in the arts due to successive lockdowns and local restrictions over the past 15 to 16 months. The benefits of pursuing these opportunities through awarding organisations that offer the grade include, as we can see, immediate potential to reach large numbers of practitioners and students across the performing arts in both private and public settings, existing support to practitioners through online resources, printed materials, workshops and specialist teaching qualifications, which could also extend to upskilling teachers, world-class syllabi in a wide variety of disciplines used in delivering lessons to students and evidencing candidate outcomes in examinations, and the formal aspect of public accountability to regulatory bodies such as Ofqual. And of course, there's the involvement of the CDMT. We provide industry quality assurance, quarterly membership meetings to discuss common practices, annual reviews of standards, and preparation of joint publications. CDMT is interested in working with partners to explore how best to bridge the gap between the numbers of students undertaking performing arts qualifications in schools and those having to pursue their studies elsewhere at their own cost. Regrettably today, the prospects of students to work towards achievement and reward in the performing arts appear largely dependent on their ability to access and pay for extracurricular activities, which places a significant number of them at a disadvantage. Preparation for graded exams, as we know, develops high standards of performance, perception, creativity, knowledge and understanding. The exams provide a scheme of clear incremental standards by which students, teachers and parents, guardians can measure progress in acquiring genuine command of the skills required in each discipline, whether for educational or social purposes. And as the slide highlights, dance-specific awarding organisations have a combined annual examination entries in the UK of approaching 500,000 and almost 250,000 overseas, and a membership of teachers of 15,000 in the UK and almost 10,000 overseas again. So we suggest that schools should be encouraged to take advantage of these existing large networks of qualified specialist practitioners that awarding organisations have within their operational structures, including teachers and examiners, to make best use of the expertise that is on offer within the awarding organisations community, especially because appreciation of and engagement in the performing arts together make an essential contribution to the well-being and happiness of individuals and society more widely. And this has never been more important than in the current context. So CDMT will continue to do our part to assist both member organisations and individual practitioners in working to come to terms with the aftermath of the pandemic and its impact on all our lives. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ginny?
I'm so sorry. That was a very, very inopportune fallout of my internet connection. I do beg your pardon. It's like all the best laid plans, and there it is with the wheel of death spinning round on the screen, and at the end of such an engaging presentation. So my apologies for that, Glyn. And I think it just presents to us such a picture of contrast, doesn't it? On one side, such a lack of opportunity for young people to be learning dance in schools, and such an enthusiasm and appetite for dance out of schools. And as Laura and you have both clearly explained to us, such a difficulty with bridging that gap, really, to ensure that all children and young people have the opportunities that we obviously all sincerely want for them. So I think that just points again to really pick up the points I raised at the end of Laura's around how we can remove those barriers. And thank you for suggesting some very tangible strategies for ways in which we could be doing that and utilising the workforce that we already have within the outer school sector to support and reinforce dancing taking place in schools. A question has come in, which I think I will read, but I think it's one for us to come back to as a broader conversation after our last presentation, which is from a member, an ISTD teacher who is based in North Wales, and she says, I want to help my young students and the community by conducting workshops and inviting in international teachers and guest artists. In other words, injecting more dance into her local community. And her question is around how she can do that. And I think we should come back to that with the broader topic of how we can build these connections and we can build more dance activity in and around the local community and the schools that they serve. So thank you so much, Glyn. And now we are going to move on to Solange Erdang, who is the Chief Executive of Erdang Academy. And under Solange's leadership, Erdang has developed as one of the UK's most prolific vocational colleges with an internationally renowned reputation. Solange has spent her career pushing boundaries and building cultural bridges, and sits on various panels promoting and developing diversity in professional musical theatre and dance training. As well as being the Chief Executive of Erdang Academy, she is also co-founder and co-director of the Black British Theatre Awards and the Black Theatre and Film Directory. And she is also the founder of the Link Talent Agency and a patron of both the Palace of the Dogs and Jason Thomas Performing Arts. How she has any more time, I don't quite know, but she also passionately supports various charities based in the performing arts, charity-based performing arts projects, both in the UK and in Cape Town, South Africa. So a very warm welcome to Solange.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to start by explaining the history of Erdang. My late mother was the founder. She came over from South Africa, and her mission was to found a ballet school at the time, which was very inclusive, and I was brought up in that environment, and all I've ever wanted to do is take that ethos, that founding ethos of Erdang forward. So, you know, talking about diversity, I just always think that you can't add diversity, you have to be diverse as an institution. It's something that takes time and effort. And yeah, I mean, for instance, Erdang is not funded at all for their outreach, but we do a hell of a lot. A lot of schools ask how, and that is the answer. It is outreach. It is the best thing ever to find talent, find uniqueness, and be able to train it, whether it's through a scholarship on the foundation through to the main courses, or whether it's supporting a local school for age 12 upwards. I do travel around as much as I can in order to support schools around the country, especially those that are starting BTEC foundations up, and helping them nurture the talent to come through to Erdang or vocational colleges. What else can I say? So I think CPD training is essential now more than ever, in order to promote diversity. I think the industry is really changing. Through my work with the Black British Theatre Awards, there is definitely a movement, and I think we as colleges have to be really responsible for ensuring that the industry can cast from British talent that's coming through the colleges, and that includes a diversity of talents. And again, I truly believe that's from age 12 upwards, at least, in order to get into vocational colleges like Erdang and to be able to have a career in the industry. So there's a word that I love to use, and I always explain it to the panel, the audition panel, and that is, it's American. And I think because I trained slightly at the for a few months at the New York School of Performing Arts as well, I was really, really impressed, and this is as a teenager, that what the Americans called affirmative action is vital. In the UK, we look at what's called positive action, which is, you know, using policies, using adverts and messages in order to be more inclusive. And I personally, and on behalf of Erdang, believe that's not enough. I think we can't just stand there. I think we have to redress the disadvantages associated with historical discrimination in the industry, and that's what it comes down to. The industry itself is changing, and I think colleges and pre-colleges need to do what they can in order to make sure this continues, and opportunities are given to talent wherever they're from. And that can mean, you know, a lot of work going out there to find that talent. I would like to say that, you know, with the CDMT in particular, they really do support our colleges in what we say is chasing the funding in order to help colleges like ours. It's always an issue, and it's never going to go away. But I think the more that we come together as one to ensure there's change, I think the better. You know, we're always fighting for the Dance and Drama Awards, and now specialist subjects, and it is very worrying for private institutions, especially who want to carry on their good work and put people on stage throughout the world. I don't know if you want to play my video, just to show you, after the Black Lives Matter movement, we actually started the Erdang Caribbean Society, African Caribbean Society, and this is what they did for New Year. This is from the students.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun, weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones.
So the reason I'm very proud of that is because it came from the students, and that's why I feel very supportive to the students, and I think it makes a difference to the students' journey for all students from all demographics. It's so important to almost cast your college as you want to see it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and what an inspiring note to finish our keynotes on. And I think in a way brings us full circle, doesn't it, with Anne started off talking about the importance of the children and young people's voice, and to see that so beautifully presented by the Erdang Academy students in terms of their response to the Black Lives Matter movement and the challenges of 2020 is a great example of putting the young person at the heart of their future development. And I think there have been a couple of sort of key themes that have been coming through today. One is around how we knit together access so that we ensure that everybody does have the opportunity to benefit from what dance has to offer. And then secondly, I think connected to that, how we build those progression pathways so that a diverse range of performers can be developed for the future. And I suppose that what I'd like to pick up with you, Solange, is you made reference to the performers of the future and what skills they're going to need. In our first session this morning and the previous session, I was reflecting on how the world has changed so dramatically. Every aspect of our lives have changed. But I'd be really interested to hear from you how you feel the industry is changing, and what are the skills that we need to be nurturing in our next generation of performing artists.
Well, through the Black British Theatre Awards and Erdang, I do speak to a lot of casting directors and directors on a regular basis. And what I find is uniqueness and versatility, you know, in order to carry on working. They like quirky, unique, talented individuals. And definitely diversity is really coming up. There's definitely a concern in the industry that, you know, bringing over talent from America when it's already here and it's not being nurtured, that's definitely an issue that is being faced at the moment. And that's why I personally think colleges really need to outreach and like America, and bring these talented kids through the system. Definitely versatility, because productions now are asking for people to be able to do everything, performers. Backstage creatives are not diverse, and that's really needs addressing. And role modeling, obviously, and mentoring. In order to prepare students, you know, for either colleges and then through to the industry.
Thank you so much, Solange. I think that's a great sort of jumping off point for our panel discussion. So if I could ask now that we bring all our panelists back onto the screen. I'll just wait for you all to appear. Here you come. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, I think, for that rich range of presentations. And I think there were some real common themes that were emerging through them. And one that I would like to pick up as a starting point is from Anne. And you were talking about progression routes, and certainly the Let's Create strategy also talks about the talent pipeline, and this sort of sense that you have to, you know, find the talent and really sort of bring it through to the profession. I wondered if we could just ask you to say a few words around that concept of the talent pipeline and how Arts Council see that as a sort of a central tenet of the Let's Create strategy.
Absolutely. I think we would all say that in our sector, across our art form professions, there isn't just one way that you progress. There isn't one linear way that we meet people who have come through the system. And people come at it from school or from outside of school. They come at it from their families or from their teachers. We have to be very open-minded to all of the ways that children and young people might come to us and how we can support them along the way. One thing we found while we were working on Let's Create is that we had our instincts and we had our gut feelings and we had the testimonies of people across the sector. What we didn't have as much of was data around who was participating where and who was making progress. The most that we had available at that time came from music education. I think someone mentioned the music education hubs. They are required to collect quite a lot of reporting data. So we can do some tracking there around who's taking part at various stages along the way, from your first access up to being in, I don't know, the National Youth Jazz Orchestra or something like that. We don't necessarily have the same in other art forms. So what we want to do is try and get a better sense of the picture, what it looks like, how we might be able to map simply what those progression steps look like. That would apply to you no matter where you live, or whether you're at a conservatoire or a private dance, having private dance tuition. So we can really understand what those barriers are and throw everything we have at addressing them.
Thank you. And I think that sense of sort of mapping out the various entry points and how we progress is such an interesting and important piece of work. Laura, you talked really eloquently to the barriers to children and young people being able to access dance if it's not immediately available to them in their own school context, and some of the challenges, some of the many challenges that arts in schools are facing at the moment. I'm sure you've spent a lot of time thinking about how to address those. So I'd be interested to pick up on the question that you posed, perhaps pose it back to you about how do we remove those barriers to access, and how do we ensure, to pick up on Solange's point, that there is diversity sort of built in really from the outset into the dance sector.
Yeah, there's kind of a few strands to my thinking here. So I guess there's the ideal world, maybe the long-term aim, if the sun shone every day and finance was never an issue and all of those things magically, just came right, then in an ideal world, that high quality dance teaching would be in every single school, regardless of where you live, whether you live in a rural area or an urban area. That's the dream, and that's kind of the long-term mission that we're working towards. But I think in the shorter term, it's around subject knowledge and staff confidence, and there's a real kind of postcode lottery, I guess, around who happens to be your dance teacher in school, if there is a dance teacher in school, if it's brought into as a subject by the leadership team. So I think linking back to what Glyn talked about, there's real potential there for subject experts to work in partnership with schools. And one of the things that we really try and address through our teacher CPD is for all staff, whether they're dance specialists or not, to be open-minded about what talent looks like, because it isn't always, the child that's at the front of the class that's really bendy because they've been doing dance classes and gymnastics since they were 2. It might be actually the quiet child that's at the back of the class that maybe hasn't got tons of technique yet, but is really creative in their approach. So I think it's around addressing staff confidence and getting them to look through perhaps a different lens about what potential and creativity looks like in their school.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. And I think there's also the challenge, isn't there, of once we nurture and find that talent and have those first opportunities in school, how we can build the progression routes on from that, so that we can join up the dots and move the young person through the progression pipeline, to coin that phrase. It strikes me from another side, Glyn, that that there's clearly a real issue here around persuading the unconverted that aren't in our audience today of the value of dance for everybody. How do we get those messages across to politicians, to funders, to parents, of the value of what we're talking about?
Well, in this area, CDMT particularly, we take a 3-pronged approach. We liaise with regulators, whether it's in the awarding organisations world or the vocational training world, whether we're dealing with Ofqual or Ofsted or the Office of Students. We sort of talk to regulators about the content of provision to ensure that what's available is what the industry needs. It's what practitioners demand. On a civil service level, we do interact directly with the Department for Education. We interact with the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, producing reports. During the pandemic, we were, as you know, Ginny, in constant contact with the out of school settings team at the Department for Education, providing suitable guidance and suitable information to our members and the wider network about suitable approaches to teaching and learning in the pandemic conditions. And thirdly, through the all-party parliamentary group for performing arts education and training, which we established only last January, and is, I must say, is getting increased interest from parliamentarians. We now have 15 in the group. We have made presentations particularly on this topic, looking for and asking for better integration between secondary and primary arts education and the work of awarding organisations. And I would like to say a moment about the work of the awarding organisations. You know, we are dealing with institutions who, in many cases, have been active internationally for the best part of 100 years. And so, in many cases, you know, the numbers of examinations taking themselves are extraordinary. 1.1 million grade exams in the UK each year, a further 0.8 million internationally. 80,000 teachers in the UK working with the awarding organisations, 100,000 internationally. Clearly, there must be some way of us integrating the expertise, the value, the buy-in which teachers have with awarding organisations to work more collaboratively and more closely with primary and secondary as schools in the UK. And that's what we hope to push for, and certainly something I've advocated very strongly for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Glyn, and I would like to pick up on the international context in a moment. But before I do, I would like to come back to Solange and just ask for your insight from a practical experience. You've talked about, I love the phrase you use, that you have to be diverse in order to have a diverse student group. You know, your organisation has to be diverse in its approach, and you clearly do that by building those connections individually between your academy and the outreach work, the context in which you do that sort of first point of contact. And I think that'd be really interesting for the teachers in the audience to hear a little bit about how that works, and whether you experience barriers in terms of going out to groups and contexts that you haven't, you know, worked in before. You know, are there barriers to overcome to do that, and if so, how do your artists approach that and build that direct connection through to the academy?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I personally visit and my staff visit the schools around the UK, it is having the guts to pull them up, I guess, on what are they doing to be inclusive. And, you know, have you tried, you know, talent scouting and maybe giving a scholarship, even if it's for a Saturday school, whatever it is. You know, do you go into a local school? Do you find talent there? Do you scholarship anyone? I mean, for us, we have a one-year foundation course, which is the vocational part of the course. There's no academics. It's not a qualification, but it's basically to get kids that might not have had the opportunity to train, you know, since the age of 2, on a Saturday, up to speed in order to come into the college. So, you know, we do a lot. We must give at least 15 scholarships a year, and that is a way through. I do find that, you know, colleges have been left to do it for themselves. There was funding for 1 year and 1 year only to do this work, but because, you know, you have to feel passionate, you have to want to make change in the world, that you do have to go into local schools and almost enlighten someone that might not know that places like us exist. And that would go from the local dance school to the foundation courses around the UK. So yeah, so, you know, I do pull some schools up and just say, well, why don't you give 1 out of 10 students a scholarship and make sure that you've gone in? And that's, you know, you get so much pride from that as they succeed, that you have nurtured this person.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lawrence. That's a really helpful insight, and also I think a challenge to our members, and get out there and go and meet some groups and people that you haven't yet worked with, and I think that's a great challenge to pose. We have got a message in the chat box, and just to remind us that if you have questions that you'd like to ask the panel, please feel free to put them into the Q&A box, and we will pick those up and respond to them. Whilst you're thinking and perhaps typing questions in, I wanted to pick up on the international context, because we promised that we would ensure that although you are all English-based organisations, that we do consider the broader context of the work that we're doing. I suppose 2 questions really, and I'll just invite you to indicate if you'd like to respond to them. One is about how do the ideas that we've just been discussing today, how do they play out on an international stage? And I suppose connected to that, how can our international delegates take these ideas and apply them in their own countries, in their own settings? So would anyone like to offer a response to those questions?
I mean, I can talk about Erdang. We've recently put a BTEC into Dubai, and again, we are very pushy about making sure that the community as a whole, not just the expats there, have opportunity with us. Yeah,
thank you, and that's obviously working for you, so that's great to hear that you're building that connection. Glyn, I know from a qualification perspective that sort of recognition of qualifications is a key feature really, isn't it, in terms of transferability of activity from one country to another. Can I ask you to say a few words around that from your experience of the international work?
Yeah, absolutely. The awarding organisations of which we've been talking are active in over 100 plus countries globally, with, as I've said, huge numbers of candidate entries, and in many of those countries they have formal recognition arrangements in place with various governments, funders. If we think of the state education systems in Australia, graded exams are built into school leaving certificates. The achievement of a grade exam leads to a certain number of credits, which allows for progression within mainstream education. There are other similar types of models used around the world. Recognition comes in many forms, whether it's a formal type of accreditation onto a framework, whether it's articulated in terms of credit, an amount of achievement that contributes to a larger qualification, and that's a useful model that can be built into GCSEs or A levels, in fact, if we think of our own context. And thirdly, there's the issue of funding, because government policy in that area clearly does affect take-up. What I would highlight really is that it's not just a matter of qualifications. I think it's really also a matter of the support which the awarding organisations give to the teachers who prepare candidates for those qualifications. It's the operational systems and the workshops and the teaching qualifications and the syllabi which inform, in fact, quality assure that excellent work. And some time ago, I mean, this is another idea more than anything, it was the idea of possibly holders of having a specialist, holding a teaching diploma, those teachers who held a specialist teaching diploma from a performing arts graded exams awarding organisation were given preferential status in terms of their pay grade in certain contexts. Again, that was a model that was active in Australia. Lots of ideas there, but I do feel quite passionately that we have an opportunity to tap into this invaluable expertise, which we've heard of all about today.
Thank you so much. And Anne or Laura, would you like to add anything to the international conversation? Anne.
Yeah, just to say that at the Arts Council, with our new strategy, we have a huge emphasis on the work that might happen internationally. It is one of our main areas of focus, how we might support artists and organizations to tour internationally, bring international work in. And of course, with the new strategy, children and young people and those progression routes are woven throughout everything that we do. So I think you can expect to see some activity there from us over the next few years that relates to supporting progression routes and some kind of international connections.
Brilliant, and that leads us nicely into a sort of multi-part question that's come in the Q&A box, which is really talking about progression for international students, and the question asker is asking about how can we help our international students to be more aware of the UK vocational schools and have the same opportunities. Are vocational schools able to visit internationally or deliver some free workshops, for example? And she's very much asking from, I assume, a dance school perspective. So that sounds like one for Solange to come back on.
We already do visit all over the world. We have got an affiliation in Portugal now, mainly to deal with the Brexit issues and visas. Not a lot of the colleges now can't take international schools and international students because of Brexit, because of the new trusted status for UK borders. So our reaction to that is to go international and actually affiliate with colleges and hubs around the globe. So we've already Portugal, Canada, America, obviously Dubai. We were starting in Hong Kong, but COVID has delayed everything. But yes, I think it's the best way, the second best way to get first-hand knowledge is for vocational colleges to partner or affiliate with colleges anywhere.
Thank you, and great plans that you have there for continuing to reach out. And Laura, I know from One Dance UK's perspective that you certainly have strong relations with the devolved UK nations. Would you like to add anything from that perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I think that lots of the issues that we've talked about today kind of touch on the post-pandemic recovery, and therefore are applicable right across the board. But yeah, we do work closely with colleagues in the devolved nations. We do see lots of kind of similar issues, particularly around funding for schools, but some really interesting developments in Wales with their new curriculum that's coming through that does embed expressive arts into the curriculum, and dance is featured as part of that. And I guess one of the questions that's coming through from Welsh schools and Welsh teachers is around that confidence to deliver that subject area. But I think that's a really positive step that dance has been recognised as such an important part of expressive arts, and that expressive arts is embedded into that curriculum all the way through. So I think it'll be really interesting for the other nations to keep an eye on what happens with that Welsh curriculum as it develops, and their new suite of qualifications as well.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think that's a really helpful point to bring in, and so certainly a beam of light there, isn't it, from the Welsh curriculum perspective. So we're coming towards the end of our time. I'm just going to try and summarise, and then I'm going to come back to you all with one last sort of question for to take home. And it strikes me, that there's great sort of unity in understanding of the value of dance education, and I suppose quite a sense of consensus around the barriers and that are getting in the way from that, whether it is at a policy level or at a practical level for the young person having access to dance, and clearly a sense that we need to be working together cohesively to join up that sector. And to go back to Anne's point right at the beginning, it's about sort of mapping that progression, those progression routes, so that we understand how how children and young people access dance at every step of the way, so that we can build that vision of a diverse workforce and vibrant workforce for the future. I think I'm going to pause for one moment because I think we have one more question and I don't want to miss that. Oh no, it was just a response to say thank you for your answers to the last one. So that's absolutely fine. We're on top of the questions. So I think to finish off, given that we have lots of practitioners in our audience today, I would just like to ask you all to offer a recommendation of what our delegates can do here and now to provide, to try and address at a local and individual level the challenges of accessing dance for children and young people in their local communities. So perhaps a wish or a recommendation for our delegates to take away. Who would like to come first with that? Laura.
So kind of going back to the point about advocacy and how we get decision makers and stakeholders to change their mind and to see the value of dance. And I need to come up with a snazzier name for this, but I feel like advocacy doesn't always have to be top down. It can definitely be bottom up. And the best advocates for dance are young people who are engaged in dance. So I think there's lots that we can do, and it might feel very small scale, but actually if we're all doing it, if you've got that one young person who's absolutely passionate about dance and you get them to go and speak in their local primary school, or they come and support you doing a workshop, and those other young people hear it from the horse's mouth, that is advocacy work. And if you convince one young person who then goes home and tells their parent, oh, I did this dance session, it was really great, and it might be tiny baby steps, but actually I think we all need to think about what we can all do to advocate. It's not all about speaking to MPs and getting tons of funding. If we all do that little bit in our own communities and our own schools, actually we can make a huge difference there. So yeah, bottom up advocacy.
That's a wonderful practical suggestion. Thank you so much. Anne, would you like to?
Yeah, following on from what Laura said, I mean, a big part of my job and others here today is this kind of policy long game that we've talked about, looking for real changes in education, and that's critical and that's vital, and we will continue to do that. But right now, like Laura, I feel I want to say, let's not forget about children and young people right now, today, for whom 3, 4, 5 years of hard graft to get policy change just isn't fair. And as Laura said, there's the quiet ones in the back. There's the children who don't have the support system of strong family networks around them. Let's not forget that although the long game is vital, so is our responsibility to children and young people right now today.
Thank you so much, Anne. Who's next, Glyn?
Yes, certainly. I mean, we must focus on the learner. We've all been in a position where we've had our time specializing in the things which we feel passionate and enjoy participating in. Yes, as organizations, I know we all individually talk to those people in positions of influence, but I believe that would really help and possibly make teachers and the current learners feel more valued, is that we would collect more case studies, that the corpus of information, the corpus measuring and describing the impact that our work in dance, drama and musical theatre makes on people's lives. I believe that's the most compelling of arguments. Whether it's on an artistic merit or whether it's from a well-being perspective, out there, I think real experiences projected and made strong as a coherent argument across all of us as partners will make for a better future.
Thank you. That's a great addition, I think, to it. So we've got the take that practical step at your local level, and particularly really engage your young person, your students in being advocates, but also make sure we record that so that we can share it, and we can share it sort of upstream, if you like, with organisations, and therefore up through to the policymakers and the politicians. And at the last session of today, we're going to be hearing some of those case studies from members who are taking innovative steps to sort of re-engage their businesses and work with new audiences. But for this morning's session, I'm going to leave the last word with Solange. What would your recommendation to our delegates be?
I would say be the change, find talent, change people's lives. The funding might come to do this, it might not, but I think the more lives that are changed, it will come up through vocational colleges and into the industry. And I think that's more powerful. That's the most powerful message there is the role models that are in the industry that started with their local dance teacher and was supported.
The change you want to see. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That is the perfect note, I think, on which to finish this morning's symposium. Thank you all so much for your time and for sharing your knowledge and expertise so generously with us. I think there is clearly such a consensus of opinion about what we're trying to achieve for the dance sector and for children and young people's lives, and I think it heartens me in very challenging times, I think, to know that the profession wants to work together and that we're all trying to push towards the same ends. So thank you all so much for your contributions this morning, and we're now going to break for lunch, and those who are joining us again will be coming back and needing to log in with a new link to the next session, which is the director updates. But thank you, Anne, Laura, Glyn and Solange, for your time this morning and for your very valuable and inspiring contributions.
Thank you.
Thank you.